The Ugly Tuna Saloona was a popular hangout spot in Columbus, Ohio on April Fool's Day of 2006. Cameras captured the busy establishment's traffic that night as the bar patrons arrived for a night of partying. They also captured each patron's exit from the club. Well, all except one, because it appears one man entered the club but never left. If you enjoy true crime stories, please click subscribe below and make sure to set the notification bell to all to be alerted every time I upload a new video. To join the True Crime Family newsletter, please look at the information in the description below. Thank you. 27-year-old medical student Brian Shaffer and his friends had planned for the Ugly Tuna to be their first stop on a nightly pub crawl. But for Brian, it was also the last. He was last seen on camera with his friends Clint and Meredith at 1:15 a.m., making their way up the escalator to the North High Street establishment's second-floor bar. An hour later, only Clint and Meredith are seen leaving. Having become separated from their friend within the establishment, Brian was nowhere to be found when the lights came on at the end of the night. After searching the entire bar for him, including the bathrooms, the pair of friends were forced to leave without him, wondering just what happened to their friend. He must have left, they assumed, confused as to why he wouldn't let either of them know. Brian had been having a tough go of it recently. His mother had contracted a rare form of cancer called myodysplasia and had deteriorated much quicker than he had anticipated. Just 3 weeks previous to his disappearance, she had passed away. Brian would write of his adoration for his mother on his MySpace page, saying, quote, "My mother was the greatest, most wonderful person in the world." But despite these difficult and troubling times, Brian very much did have things in his life he was looking forward to. That Monday, he and his girlfriend Alexis were flying to Miami, and there he planned to propose. Alexis called him the next day, excited to speak with him about the trip. Brian didn't answer. Knowing he had went out with friends the previous night, she assumed he was probably sleeping off a hangover and waited to call him again later that day. But again, Brian didn't answer. And as the hours passed, it was becoming obvious to those in Brian's life that something much more nefarious than a night of drinking and recovery was at play. He was nowhere to be found. When Brian's dad arrived at his apartment to search for him, all seemed normal. His car was there. His room was neat, his medical books still sitting on the shelves. Brian's younger brother Derek also joined the search for him. Taxi drivers were questioned. Local hospitals were checked. All roads led nowhere. And when no trace of Brian's whereabouts could be found, Randy Shaffer had to go and file a missing persons report for his son, just 3 weeks after losing his wife in tragic fashion. Missing posters were posted to telephone poles around town, and the Ugly Tuna Saloona was searched again, inside and out. From the trash cans in the alleyway outside the club, all the way down to the Olentangy River, police and Brian's family were searching everywhere they thought he could have wandered off to on foot. Cadaver dogs were brought in to search the entirety of the Ohio State campus. As investigators reviewed camera footage from both the main entrances and an emergency exit, they came across a troubling reality. Every single person that had entered the pub that night was accounted for, except Brian. The only conclusion detectives could come to was perhaps Brian had found his way out of the building through a temporary freight elevator, which had been set up during construction. It was unlikely, as he would have had to climb down a rusty ladder along the shaft, something that seemed unlikely for a drunk patron to attempt, much less pull off. But with no footage of him leaving through all the regular entrances that had video cameras, it was worth a try. They retrieved security footage from nearby bars The Sloppy Donkey, Mad Mex, and Lucky Stouthouse. Certain Brian had to have been caught on camera by one had he indeed escaped out of the freight elevator. But once again, Brian was nowhere to be found on any of the footage. Columbus had more security cameras than Cincinnati, Toledo, and Cleveland combined. It was a heavily surveilled area. The odds of someone walking through it and not being caught on camera were astronomical. And yet, here they were. By all appearances, Brian was enjoying himself on the 1:15 a.m. security footage. He was well-dressed, with a neat haircut and shave, and on his wrist, a yellow cancer awareness bracelet in memory of his mother. With nowhere else to turn, police focused on the last two people seen with Brian that night, Clint and Meredith. Meredith took and passed the polygraph test. Clint, however, refused. Brian's brother Derek never knew Clint very well and says something's always been off with him. He claims Clint has spoke negatively about his brother since his disappearance. As time went on, Randy set up a website to encourage tips of his son's disappearance, posting photos of happier times in the hope someone would recognize his son. As with any case, hoaxes and mistaken identities began to dribble in. Alexis was heartbroken. She called Brian's phone every night. It went directly to voicemail every time. But suddenly, 6 months after his disappearance, the phone rang. Alexis held her breath and nervously anticipated what she would do if someone picked up. Nobody did. But records show the phone pinged a tower in the suburb of Hilliard, 14 miles northwest of central Columbus. Was it a glitch? Did somebody find and turn on Brian's phone? Or was Brian Shaffer alive? Many theories about Brian's disappearance have been floated online. Everything from his mother's death forcing him to run away, to foul play that sees him never leaving the tavern and being carried out in pieces inside of something. Sadly, in September of 2008, the Shaffer family would suffer still a third tragedy. During a nighttime storm, Randy Shaffer was struck by a falling tree branch. He was found the next morning. Over the course of less than 3 years, Derek Shaffer had lost his mother, brother, and now his father. And like the tragedies, the hoaxes weren't finished either. Among the messages on Randy's obituary on the Columbus Dispatch website was one that said, "Dad, I love you. Love, Brian. U.S. Virgin Islands." Brian had often told his friends of his plans to eventually move to a tropical place and form a band, so it appeared a glimmer of hope he was alive remained. But that hope was dashed when the comment was traced to a public computer in surrounding Franklin County and determined to be yet another bluff. Why do so many people have interest in telling fake stories of Brian's ultimate fate? Are they simply trolls, or someone who knows something trying to ensure police waste their time going down worthless rabbit holes? Till this day, nobody knows what happened to Brian Shaffer. Derek holds out hope his brother may still be alive. Brian has a small black speckle no bigger than a centimeter in his left iris, and a tattoo of the Stickman from Pearl Jam's single Alive on his right bicep. 4 years after Brian vanished, Pearl Jam dedicated the track Come Back to him at a performance at Columbus's Nationwide Arena, just 2 miles from the Ugly Tuna. If the song is even close to accurate, then somewhere out there, Brian Shaffer may still be alive. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening, and please consider checking out some of the many other true crime videos on my channel. Please don't forget to both subscribe and click the notification bell so that you can be notified every time I upload a new video. I'm Jason Hebert, and I'll see you next time.